Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other, just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that, the passing there had worn them really about the same, and both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. As David Orrs says in the opening of his book, we really don't even need to cite this poem. We all know it, especially here in the West. Robert Frost wrote this, and it has become synonymous with a type of person, a mentality, Americanism, a bravery of taking the path others don't take, forging ahead, doing the thing nobody else does, and how that is the thing that shifts our destiny. I mean, check out the ending for this TED Ed video.
And I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference.
Wow, I mean, that is a damn difficult untrodden path. Up a mountain, over cliffs, clearly. This is exactly what Frost wrote and meant. No. See, the subtitle of David Orrs' book is Finding America in the Poem That Everyone Loves and Almost Everyone Gets Wrong. So guess what they get wrong? Everything. Like, all of it. See, when we read, when we hear something, when we watch something, we generally aren't aware that we're building and structuring inferences in meaning with every single step, hell, with every half or quarter step. The very process of constructing knowledge itself can easily be systematically corrupted by confirmation bias, cultural production, and other garbage that fills the cracks in experience. I like to use the term, you're putting yourself in the text. And even with this, which is a pretty damn simple poem, I mean, if you're going to screw something up that only took me the first moments of a video, imagine the first paragraphs of any major philosophical work of note. That, stepping back, we should be actually spending time. Let's talk about understanding not just where you've been screwing up and how, but also let's get you some tools and some thoughts and methods that we've talked about so far in this series and some that are coming that can help you. All right, so I'm not going to waste a lot of time teasing it out. The poem is about someone traveling the woods, coming to a fork and seeing no difference between two paths. None. No difference at all. The paths are the same. Paths are identical in every way. And then they choose the second path, saving the first for later, immediately feeling regret and resentment on the passage of time that they know will come, that they will not go see this other path. They will romanticize this moment. They will look back on it and be upset that they didn't travel it, but they will look back on it and know that they took a path that makes them special, that no one else took, that everyone else just should have. Everyone else took the other path. I took the special one. I am not like other girls. And this makes all the difference. The poem doesn't celebrate individualistic choice making and validating taking this unconventional path at all. Their paths were never different. The choice is irrelevant. The infantile romantic nature of what might have been is what is on display. It is what is being critiqued and mocked, not any material realities or choices. And this, I mean, to me, this is why the poem is brilliant. And we'll be getting through all of this through this because you did what the poem does and talks about with the poem itself. Go back through. Take the words for what they are, what is actually written. You coming to this poem and having a fork in the road. What you end up doing is walking a path of clarity, only to have the romantic notion of what might have been rewrite your own reading. Try it. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. Just these first two lines. We can see what Frost is doing. There's crystal clear simplicity, followed by what Michel Serres would call noise. We're going to be hitting Serres later on, but noise is information that doesn't have a clean pattern and is kind of tossed in. Emotions are often this. And this first sentence is crisp. The second is emotionally complex. Complexity you might identify with. And be one traveler, long I stood. The emphasis, the overemphasis now is on this individual, the single, the fact that you do not have a choice and you must choose a path. There's two and you are one. I can't take both. The choice is forced on me. And looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. It's impressing on the reader that he saw everything about the paths possible at that point. This isn't that he's realized stuff he missed. No, he simply looked both down and saw that they were the same. Then took the other, just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim. The traveler, the narrator, the person who sang the poem, here I think they reveal their hand. They show their drive to make the second path seem better. See, they add perhaps having the better claim. Having perhaps, by what logic or reason, but you go with it. Perhaps, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Oh, yes, of course, it needed to be walked on. Why didn't we realize that? It has more grass, even though it has the same amount of grass. It's begging the traveler to walk on it, despite it being just a path and being identical to the other one. Though as for that, the passing there had warned them really about the same, and both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. I don't think it's possible to even read this as anything other than, oh yeah, but then again, they're basically the same. They're identical. There's no difference between them. But he's already decided, perhaps the second, already showing his internal biases as he's going, and he chooses. Oh, I kept the first for another day. He's doing this thing we do, as if we believe we've got a fork in the road. Save scumming life almost, where you're just hitting F5 as much as possible to create these little miniature branches, knowing that you're not going to quick load the fucking game at every one of these choices. No one's doing that. Life continues on, right? That's what he says. Yet, knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. He's not going to hit F9. He's not going to quick load. He's not going to return to the spot. This is the choice he made. He probably will never return. And immediately he feels regret. He's on the path. This is all happening while he's on the path. This isn't traveling through time. It's still in that moment. But he's made his choice and he's on. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. He's chosen the second, and he knows he won't be coming back. He knows he won't be coming back. He sighs about it every single time. He sighs. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. This is the finishing touches of constructing the delusion, the fantasy. The path he took was the same, but something drove him to walk it more, and now he and you are certain the path was the one less traveled, despite everything saying it wasn't. 45 words. It took 45 fucking words. That's it. These are moments. That's it. And with that, the words are so stunningly well put together that you don't even notice little things. Most people don't even notice the sigh. How about the title of the poem? The title is The Road Not Taken. The path the traveler took isn't the subject of the poem. That's how it works. In fact, the poem itself is a masterclass in how the process of understanding isn't just this unidirectional thing. It's a mistake a lot of people make when they talk about thinking or reading or understanding. It's almost like they think there's a conveyor belt of knowledge and experience that's putting facts together and then dumping those facts into memory. Frost shows us that that's not the case. We actually rewrite previous conclusions, and we do that without even noticing. Just go read it. Justify anywhere in the language or structure or wording of this poem that Frost had the slightest meaning in the way that the world takes it, from presidents to poet laureates to marketing people to TED Ed. But don't feel bad. Like, I didn't know this either. I mean, one of Frost's closest friends is actually this really brilliant poet in his own right. I like him, Edward Thomas. He's less skilled, granted, but very sharp. I'm going to give you an example. He wrote the following just months before enlisting in World War I on behalf of the British. It's called In Memoriam, Easter 1915 by Edward Thomas. The flowers left thick at nightfall in the wood. This Eastertide called into mind the men now far from home who, with their sweethearts, should have gathered them and will do never again. Tight and beautiful, and sadly, that beat will have a payoff later in this video. See, when Frost sent him the poem, he didn't send any explanations or notes, just the poem. Thomas didn't grasp the point either. He identified with it. He found it staggering, was his words. And David Orrs breaks this down exactly in this wonderful text that I'm reading about. And Frost wrote Thomas a second time, and it was clear Thomas missed the point, asking him to comment further. As Orrs writes, Thomas responded in a letter dated June 13th, 1915, explaining that, quote, the simple words and unempathic rhythms were not such as I was accustomed to expect great things I like from. It staggered me to think that perhaps I had always missed what made poetry poetry. Fuck, he still didn't fucking get it. It's odd, and especially odd, considering that, as Matthew Hollis writes in The Guardian, many were the walks when Thomas would guide Frost on the promise of rare wild flowers or birds' eggs, only to end in self-reproach when the path he chose revealed no such wonders. Amused at Thomas's inability to satisfy himself, Frost chided him, no matter which road you take, you'll always sigh and wish you'd taken another. Yeah, it's, Frost wrote it about Thomas. The guy reading the poem, it's literally about, using examples literally from him. He doesn't even get it either. And Frost would respond, and he would bluntly point to the sigh and explain the gag of the entire thing. Thomas would understand it, not happily. Thomas was definitely impacted on it, not as much as Frost was by what Thomas would write back. See, to Thomas, this really isn't the least bit funny. It pricked at his confidence, at his sense of his own fraudulence, reminding him he was neither a true writer nor a true naturalist, cowardly in his lack of direction. And now the one man who understood his indecisiveness the most astutely, in particular towards the war, appeared to be mocking him for it. Thomas was obviously furious. He kind of laid a curse on Frost. He wrote back and said, I doubt if you can get anyone to see the fun of the thing without showing them and advising them which kind of laugh they are to turn on. Basically predicting everything we're talking about here, the poem Eternally Misunderstood. It's too clever for its own good, and without someone spelling it out bluntly, which ruins it, nobody will get this. For Thomas, his path would be choosing between lecturing in America or enlisting. He would enlist, and he would die by a bullet through the chest, basically as soon as he got to France. On Easter Monday, 2 years after he wrote the poem I read. Remember how it was called Easter? It wasn't. See, 2 years before writing that poem, on another Easter, Thomas began work on a travel journey that was eventually published. That trip would become a 2-year odyssey that would become him becoming a poet. And on that Easter, he would write tales of sadness, of men dying. And then 2 years later, on another Easter, another journey would end. There's a sort of meta poetry and beauty in renaming that poem, given all we're talking about here. But as for Frost, well, Frost is crestfallen, because it turned out Thomas was right. No one gets it. And unless you sit there and explain it to him, it ruins it. For us, we get something though. See, we get this perfect example of not only how we as people fuck up reading things, but we get this fantastic example also of how to break it down, thanks to David Orrs and all of the methods I'm talking about. See, we have a thing to think through that's cloudy enough to be misread by everyone ever, but also it's incredibly clear itself. I mean, this is why I think it's one of the best poems ever written. It's both cloudy and clear at the same exact time. And with this, we can use other methods, other people, and talk about how we might understand where we fucked up. Langer might say we can easily identify the error fundamentally in the form when we interpret Frost. I mean, if the roads were meaningfully different, then my choice would be significant. Could be a statement out of this. However, readers affirm the consequent. They see the claimed significance. They conclude the roads must have been different, despite textual evidence to the contrary, over and over and over. Copy might bring up the fact that we could analyze this odd middle term problem. There's zero evidence the path was unconventional or downtrodden or anything else. It's simply said. That's it. It's just a single statement. The outcomes aren't different. Nothing says that. The future involves a sigh. Clearly, the syllogism fails validity tests. It assumes the thing it must prove. Johnson's framework for inductive generalization reveals how readers commit sampling bias, how we did when we were reading it. We extract a small, non-representative sample of textual evidence. That one sentence, at the very end, it becomes the complete message, all of it. Now, I started with these guys because despite the complexity of them, they're actually the simplest of these tools. They're baseline stuff that will enable us to sort of work with other larger, more complex concepts. See, with these very simple structures, you can break into how things are talked about, how they're communicated. You can begin working on finding other meanings within, getting at other stuff that's actually mentioned inside of text, but they're not everything. Not if you want to learn. And you need to be ready to take on new concepts and use them. We're going to be having some come up. For example, for Žižek, well, Žižek would say that the real event isn't actually the choice. It's actually the retroactive construction of meaning. Žižek would identify how the traveler's future narrative creates an imaginary past that never existed. The event of choosing differently becomes this pure fantasy, yet this fantasy retroactively determines the meaning of the original non-choice. It's good shit. Nietzsche's genealogical method would expose how individualism becomes a value through resentment building up. The poem reveals the psychological need to transform arbitrary choice into superiority, the slave morality of needing to believe one's path was more virtuous when material conditions show they were fucking identical. Spinoza's geometric method of ethics demonstrates how the traveler operates through inadequate ideas. Take the sigh. The sigh reveals affect and emotion overwhelming reason in that exact sentence. The traveler's sadness stems not from an objective loss, but from imagination's tyranny over understanding. Maybe true freedom would require recognizing the necessity behind this seemingly free choice. Maybe start there. Whitehead would be wholly different. He might identify the fallacy of misplaced concreteness, treating the symbolic construction of different paths as if it were actual. The poem, it shows kind of how symbolic reference detaches from an experiential basis, creating meanings that override any perceptual reality at all. Godelier, I'm a big fan. I would say he sort of reveals how ideological structures like individualism or authentic choice, like Nietzsche, actively shape material interpretation. See, the mental framework of American exceptionalism transforms identical material conditions into meaningful difference. This is how ideas don't just reflect reality, but actively construct it and affect us today. Marx would be super fun to apply to this. If I had to, and I like to, the poem would dramatize how bourgeois ideology transforms structural sameness into the illusion of meaningful difference, obscuring real determinants behind everything, the material conditions of it all. And then, of course, it hides them under the fetishism of choice. Lacan would probably talk about how the traveler embodies a neurotic subject who creates fantasy to avoid confronting the trauma of meaninglessness in choices themselves. That's pretty fair, actually. I like Lacan. Simondon might say that the traveler mistakes a pre-individual field of potentials, the undifferentiated forest paths, for a scene of decisive individuation. See, an authentic technical evolution, that would involve recognizing choice not as sovereign decision, but as this crystallization of relational forces, what Simondon might call the associated milieu that includes both human and non-human actors. The sigh that ends the poem, this signals that technical objects almost malfunction, its inability to achieve the stable operation that would come from resolving, rather than simply displacing these internal contradictions. Michel Serres, as I mentioned earlier, the poem demonstrates Serres' key insight that this Genesis thing that's happening is always retroactive, the Genesis, the creation. The traveler doesn't discover a pre-existing difference between paths. Instead, this traveler participates in generating difference through the act of selection itself. This exemplifies what Serres would come to call objective chance, the way subjective choices participate in creating the objective differences they appear to simply recognize. Funny that way. See, as I've said many times, philosophy's not memorizing shit. It's creation, building. It is making something with methodologies, tools, concepts. That's what this series is. David Orrs certainly wins the prize for the best book breaking down why everyone gets this wrong. And of course, thanks to this book, you have an infinite replication of videos repeating his claims, adding a few sources, smiling, telling you why you're wrong, but not how to know whether you're wrong in the future. These people tell you riddles to memorize. David Orrs doesn't. To be very clear, it's worth reading. His critique is incredible. However, one example of the type of creator who AI is definitely, thankfully, on the edge of replacing, if it's not already being done, is this gentleman, whose voice your algo will certainly have given you a drive to hear at least once. If you watch it, you might learn all the same facts and more, but what do you do with the info? You learn you're kind of dumb. You learn how we're all kind of dumb. You think this dude gave us a shit about the poem the day before this? You think he had an opinion? Do you think he cares today? You think he did any work to understand any of this? Does he give you one way to work with text to change the error from happening again the next time you read anything? He does not. Nope, that's it. No info on how to do better. Just a fun moment of realization, followed by no understanding of the larger systems at work that caused it, creating impotence and larger resentment. Fuck creators like this. Eat shit. All of them. They reinforce what Orrs and Frost and others are directly warning against and chiding, making ourselves the center of the construction of things, making ourselves not just the center really, but the tool, making ourselves the process, ourselves the method, making ourselves the fucking goal.
I get so far into the heads of the killers and the victim.
You put them in your head.
You do this. We all do. We don't have to. There's another way. And as you've hopefully seen in this video, the point of the series is not just to ramble facts to you, but to explain engagement as a process, an active process, one where you are constructing things, making things, understanding things actively, not as part of yourself, but instead as the constructions and tools they are, aware of them, standing back from them. A process where you might even be able to get something out of it that you can use again. Maybe. If you've gotten something from the streams, the videos, I'm going to ask you if you could, head into Patreon, become a member. Support is wonderful. We don't do members-only content. I don't believe in it, but for just a few bucks a month from each person who watches this, it would be enough to be able to do this full time, to be able to expand and do even more. After all, we're just starting. David Orrs expertly tears into the common sense notion of this poem. And that's only 144 words. The first paragraph of Anti-Oedipus has 187 words. Just imagine what you're going to be able to do by the end of this.